Hey there, it's Art Stewart, and this is What Matters Most on LinkedIn and YouTube. And in this episode, we're focusing on cybersecurity, risk management, governance, compliance, and a whole host of real critical issues that boards and executive leaders are facing today. We have a panel of distinguished guests and experts, all with accomplished careers, to offer a variety of perspectives on all of these issues. Lynn Terwoerds is an independent board director. She is on the board of advisors for the Executive Women's Forum on Security, Risk Management, and Privacy, and has held, among other leadership posts, roles at Microsoft and Oracle in their health services group. Catherine Allen is founder of the Santa Fe Group, as well as the chairman of the Board Risk Committee, has had a distinguished career at Citigroup, and also is an accomplished and highly experienced board director for a number of corporations in different industries. Mary Cheney has founded her own organization that addresses a lot of the issues to do with professional development and cybersecurity, where she is CEO and president of Minorities in Cybersecurity. She's the founder and CEO of her own talent solutions firm and a practicing attorney. And Tamika Foster is also a highly experienced executive leader in a variety of companies, specializing in governance, risk, and compliance, and has held, among other companies, former leadership posts with Bed & Bath, the Home Depot, and E&Y. So ladies, welcome to What Matters Most.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are going to have sort of a freewheeling conversation here and focusing, at least initially, on what's happening with the cybersecurity industry. That's a pretty broad question. So we know that it's a growing industry. It's a growing concern at the executive level, across management disciplines, and certainly with boards and governance. And one of the big things that's affecting the cybersecurity world is diversity issues, how to bring more qualified and talented folks into the profession. So I guess the first question I would ask you is, what is the current state of the cybersecurity and risk management industry and profession? Anybody want to start?
Well, I'll start
Well,
because I'm going to start from the top down, and that is corporate boards are highly concerned about cybersecurity risk and really the broader risk management area. One of the most recent guidelines from the Securities and Exchange Commission is requiring boards to be much more up to date on cybersecurity threats, to report what those incidents that are material might be, to have more discussions in the board level. They stop short of requiring a cyber expert on the board, but they're highly recommending that boards have that. So you're from top down, you're beginning to see a great deal of interest, not just in cybersecurity, but in the greater risk management area.
Kathy, I agree with you, but I think there's a pushing the river that's happening here. Because the river we're pushing against is that women in general still only make up 20 to 25% of the workforce. And in cybersecurity, we know that's even smaller. It's double digits, but it's about half of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what the actual figure was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and think about it too. In February, as of February, there are only 8 African American CEOs in all of the Fortune 500. That's the river we're pushing against. Change is hard. And I agree, Kathy, the great thing is it's starting at the top. And I think that's really part of the place where the leverage has to happen.
Yeah, and I would say from my perspective, I'm starting with the bottom, right? I'm going to the talent level in both of our organizations. We're focused on developing the pipeline and actually completing the pipeline. So our organization source for underrepresented groups. We train transitioning and those that are having trouble getting into space, because regardless of what they tell you, there's still over 500,000 open cybersecurity jobs. And don't get me started on why we got into that problem.
500,000.
Yeah,
That's in the
I
US.
have that's it. That's in the US. That's in the US. And we can talk about why we have that problem, but essentially within our organizations, minorities in cybersecurity and Mike Talent Solutions, we're focusing in on underrepresented talent, getting people within the workforce and working with employer partners to bring them on in whatever level of role that they may find themselves in to, close that pipeline up.
And I'll add to that too. I think what we find, at least what I found in the profession, is that we want to work with people we know, we like, and we trust. And oftentimes that trust is because of a formal relationship, or that trust is because of a shared goal, or a shared a situation where maybe it's a club, maybe it's a group, maybe it's just a shared interest. And I find that it's really important to, if you don't have that shared trust, if you don't have that shared vision, how can you begin to break down those barriers so that we can show that, hey, we're all in this together? And I think that creating a goal and holding our leaders accountable is one of the first steps that we can take to ensure that we are creating some type of equitable workspace, at least with getting individuals into said role.
So I'm
Yes,
going to go back to the board's interests, because what several of you have mentioned is really the talent issue. And again, corporate boards are talent management, both creating opportunities in attracting talent and then keeping talent. And one of the things you all might bring up is we might get women and minorities into cybersecurity, but then they leave. And why is it they leave?
Well, let me naturally, we want to get into some of these professional trends and developments and challenges. But if I could just get a little bit more detail from something that we started to cover initially, which is what is driving, beyond the obvious, the interest in cybersecurity across companies. Obviously, board directors, they have a very specific fiduciary call to have attention on these issues. But what, from your perspective, because you all come from different roles and different areas and jurisdictional responsibilities within these companies, what's driving some of these concerns over cyber issues and risk management?
Well, Art, do you mind? I'd just like to poll this group here. How many breach notifications have you received?
Yeah.
I've lost count. How about you guys?
Hundreds.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. How many, I have free credit report and protection for life by now.
It's not just the credit reports, but think about the United Healthcare. Many of us, I do,
Right.
United Healthcare totally screwed up their billing, screwed up the, access to healthcare. And that was a ransomware activity. And I think there's been one just this past week on another healthcare system that's ransomware. So it's hitting your credit and financial, but it's also hitting the operations of organizations. And so that's why throughout the organization, they're concerned about this. And it could be ransomware criminals, but it also could be nation states. And we know in this election year that we're going to have more attempts, and it may be attempts on the critical infrastructure. So everybody is sort of at high alert when you're in this field.
So
And
is it mostly incident? Is it incident, the escalation and incident reports that is driving the attention?
No, the attention is because historically organizations haven't done anything about their cybersecurity risk. And so what's happened over the course of these 30 plus years, at least that I've been in this space, is that more attention is being drawn to the fact that organizations are selling data, organizations are utilizing data, organizations aren't protecting the data that they're being entrusted with. And their answer is, the knee-jerk reaction is to give someone a credit monitoring service. But, as as we all know, that doesn't necessarily, different data has different value. Healthcare data has a different value than credit card data, right? Credit card data is, the risk is associated with the credit card company. If I'm losing my personal identifiable or my personal health information, that's to me. And so organizations have historically been collecting this data, and my hair's been on fire for 20 years, 30 years in regards to what organizations are doing with the data and why they aren't protecting that data. But again, it's the answer is coming, which is the SEC regulation. And then I put on the law hat and I said, California gives individuals a right to sue for failures of cybersecurity controls. It coming a time where organizations are going to have to face it head on. And that's what's driving it, because it's going to happen.
I would say one other thing to add to that is the interest in AI, artificial intelligence, especially with ChatGPT, which also increases the risk because of the introduction of malware into some of the AI applications. So the media is finally picking up on some of these incidents and issues, but I think the concerns, at least at the board level, concerns around AI coalesce with the concerns about cybersecurity breaches.
That's right. To quote, what is it? Is it Clive Humby? I think the British mathematician said, "Data's the new oil." Right. I mean, that was back in 2006. So we've been living with this problem for quite a long time.
So when we look at some of the challenges to getting more qualified talent into these roles in companies, certainly diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programs have been very helpful in a number of ways. As I understand it, there are more women leaders and minority leaders emerging to have influence on the further maturing and development of the industry. But what has taken so long for the risk management and cybersecurity world to pay more attention to what is, I guess, a crisis in attracting qualified personnel? Is even saying it's a crisis an accurate assessment?
I'm going to let you all speak first before I get on this soapbox that I have. Go. I'm going to defer first.
No, I love you on your soapbox. I will just say that part of it is in cybersecurity, you're doing a great job if nothing happens. And that's kind of hard, again, at the board and C-suite level, to say, well, let's keep putting money into this because nothing happened. When in fact, everybody is going to have a breach, or maybe has a breach and don't even know about it. So part of it, the return on investment argument to a board and to the CFO is more difficult. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is that there just isn't enough talent out there to fill the 500,000 jobs that Mary said. But a third piece of it is until something happens, people aren't paying attention. And for those of us that understand cybersecurity, I mean, what keeps me up at night is having a breach in a electric grid that may take out electricity for months, and you're going to have chaos then. And we know that the Chinese and Iran and Russians have tried to get in and somehow succeeded sometimes in some of the critical infrastructures, just waiting to happen. So, but until it happens, you don't have that discussion. Anyway, that's sort of the beginning thought.
From my lens, what I see as an opportunity is for companies to actually give them a chance. I believe that we do have qualified minority candidates, but it all goes back to doing business with someone I know, I like, and I trust. And that's why I believe that, in order for something to change, in order for us to really see progress, it is holding ourselves accountable to take a chance on someone that maybe we wouldn't have taken a chance on otherwise.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Tamika, is so critical, because what happens is in cybersecurity, what we essentially have is a homogenous culture of mostly male, mostly Caucasian. And this isn't just in America, but this is worldwide. And what we're dealing with are problems that are inherently multicultural and global. I mean, if you even want to take out the ethics and the morality of what's going on here and just think about it in the cold, hard economic truths, we will not be prepared as a country, as a company, as a society until we can reflect back that same multiculturalism that doesn't care about the color of your skin or the language you speak, but it's the talent that you bring, right? And I don't know. I mean, I still look around and I think that HR departments and all these other organizations, you know, everybody has to lean in, but we also need to bring experts in this field. I'm on a bank board. Let me tell you, if we have a serious compliance problem, it doesn't matter that we have a compliance officer. It doesn't matter that we have a chief risk officer and internal audit. We're still going to take external legal counsel. We're still going to bring in outside experts because I don't go to my HR department if I have a serious heart disease, right? I mean, you have to bring in experts.
And okay,
Mary?
so now the soapbox
Now the
starts.
soapbox.
Now the soapbox starts. No, honestly, we caused our own problem, right? When I started, meaning the cybersecurity industry has caused its own cyber workforce development issue, in as much as we've outsourced or we've taken offshore entry-level jobs. And we did that back in 2008, 2009. And even organizations now need to ask themselves, are they working with the outside MSSP that has offshore resources? Now, if you take all the entry-level jobs and you take it out of the country, and then now you're asking for individuals in the country to have experience that you didn't give them, right? And so the roles that are out there, they're asking entry-level folks for 3 or 4 years of experience. And it's like, what are you talking about? And so we broke the pipeline because we didn't start developing entry-level talent. And so that is the issue. And now we're in this situation where we want senior level talent or junior or mid-level talent, and we don't have it because we haven't invested in that pipeline. That's what we're changing within our organizations. We have to do something about it. We have to take the same model and source from underrepresented groups. It's a talent issue. And Lynn has heard me say this before, the hackers don't care. It's about talent.
Right.
And if you're looking for talent, and then, okay, on the other side of that, truly speaking, as Tamika mentioned, there's also this sense of trust or lack of trust for people that don't look like you. Right. And then, but it's like, it's still 500,000 jobs, right? So we need bodies. This is a national security issue. We need people that are looking at the blinky lights that are going off because the tools are out there, the technology is out there, and we need to invest in people and workforce development because the SEC, going all the way back up to the board, the SEC is requiring entry-level cybersecurity professionals in your security operations center to understand business risk. You can't get that offshore. You can't. So you have to now invest and develop that pipeline and nurture. And as Tamika says, take a chance on these individuals that want to be in the space, that are hungry, that want to be there. So I'm done. I'm off my.
Yeah, so Art,
Yeah.
I want to just point out here, there's
Yeah.
a common denominator between all four of us, and you'll probably hear this as this podcast goes on. Each one of us in our own way has a vested interest in working to better the ecosystem. And in a sense, I think everybody has to be invested that way for there to be real change. And it's got to happen from the board level, from people like Kathy that's been on corporate boards almost her entire career. It takes people like Mary, who's willing to actually stand up and step away from 30 plus years in a field and have just, you know, a high level of expertise and seniority and start a nonprofit. And Tamika, who's like, has a family, is busy, probably has more responsibilities than any of us, still finds time, you know, to be involved with nonprofit organizations that help to solve and move this problem toward resolution.
Well,
So
Lynn,
I was just going to say one other issue is I believe the life cycle of a CISO is only about 2 years. You guys may have a better statistic on that. So once you even get a senior professional with experience, it's such a stressful position that they leave. And so then you start all over with building your team in an organization. So there's a lot of fluidity in this field that's not good.
Well,
And
that's,
again, the leaders, I'm sorry, Art, the CISO role is starting to become something that even junior, senior level professionals don't even want, because, you know, because of the legal risk associated with not reporting a breach. You can, you know, Joe Sullivan is the former CISO of Uber that got convicted. He was at our conference in March, and nobody wants that seat. Nobody wants to be convicted and have a felony. And, you know, so it's like, do we really want that CISO seat? And we're saying, some of them are saying, I don't even want it. It's too stressful.
well, that's, you know, so you've got the same challenge on both ends, you know, is nurturing early career stage talent to bring them up through the organization and get them onshore and you know, onshore, you know, source onshore folks that will move in and dedicate a career to cybersecurity. But then you've got, as you just mentioned, the average tenure of a chief security officer being like 2 years. And I think that's maybe a month or two better than the average tenure for a CEO right now, right? Or for a chief marketing officer. I mean, there is a trend across a number of these key C-suite titles in the last few years that the tenures are getting shorter and shorter. Lynn, you mentioned the concept of and the importance of multiculturalism in getting in building this ecosystem and getting the right kinds of talent into these roles to address the complexities that are emerging. And I know Mary affirmed that point. Expand a little bit more on this concept of multiculturalism and how that life experience, as well as professional experience, is particularly important for the way that a cybersecurity operation needs to build out within an organization, given today's complexities and threats.
I think Tamika hinted at this earlier here, and that is we find each other through affinity. You know, we may have common educational background, we may belong to same organizations, we've worked together, things like that. And while that's good, but if you start with a very homogenous and frankly singular workforce that we have had traditionally in cybersecurity, it's very hard to break that mold. So you really need to do things that go beyond that. The other piece is, and I don't want to make too broad a generalization here, but we have a very, very difficult multidimensional problem. And I just think that difficult multidimensional problems do not get solved in homogeneous, we've always done it the way it is environments. The innovation life cycle depends on, you think about the story of just our country, right? Of this hodgepodge of all these different people from different places, but we lead in technology innovation. And I think that's one of the reasons, that's at least my opinion. The other piece of this too, I think, Art, is extremely important, that everybody has to get out of their comfort zone and connect with lots of different people. It's healthy for you. You cannot think new thoughts. You cannot have creative ideas in a vacuum. And as a society, I think we have to get out of whatever, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why people are off leading their quiet lives of desperation, but this will not help our economy. This will not help us as a society. And we're seeing this in the cybersecurity space because we're at a critical place.
Well, one of the things that the DEI and BEAD movement has been very successful in doing is raising the consciousness, if you will, of characteristics to leadership like unconscious bias, right? That has now, you know, been clearly established as a significant challenge with organizations because their cultures get very monolithic. You know, in private companies, they have a significant challenge in recruiting private company directors as well as C-suite leaders that broaden the perspective of where a company may have been founded from, right? So what are some of the additional risks that a lack of diversity and multiculturalism actually injects into the risk business?
So I'm going to give you 3 quick examples. One, Santa Fe Institute here in Santa Fe. It's a think tank of physicists, computer scientists, and so forth, have done a lot of work on diversity. And they have led the research, and there's plenty other to collaborate, that you get more innovation and creativity, you get better performance, financial performance from companies, you get a better solutions to problems if you have diversity. So you have that, and there's more and more research that's telling companies, especially the Fortune 500, why diversity is good for business. Then secondly, we did some research at Women Corporate Directors on the difference between men and women on boards. And there were 2 distinct differences. One, women tend to think of stakeholders, not just the shareholders. So they tend to think of the impact on the consumers, the employees, the vendors, as well as the shareholders of a company, which makes you think more broadly. And actually, Jamie Dimon of the Business Roundtable recently said, oh, we should be thinking about this. The stakeholders, I want to say, well, duh, women have been thinking of that for a long time. But the other, and I think even more significant, is women think differently about risk. We tend to look at risk holistically. So if you look at a cyber event, it may be an operational impact, a reputational impact, impact on your employees, where it's not just one risk, where men tend to look at one risk at a time and want to kind of kill that risk and go to the next one. In these complex times, the risks that are coming at us, and they're so cascading, and the velocity of change requires people to think much more creatively and also much more of how things are interacted. And diversity falls into that. Having that diverse perspective really helps people solve those particular problems. And then the last thing I'll say is that, at least again at the board level, they're finding having diversity of opinion, experience, helps understand the geopolitical risks that were coming. And you may think you're a company based in Atlanta, Georgia, and you don't have anything in Europe or anywhere else, that you're not a global company. Well, I'm sorry. The supply chain risks, the cybersecurity attacks that come from other places, you have to think, globally.
Well, and also, certainly we've been going through a political battle over ESG, and DEI and B is a big component of the new regulatory, legal, policy-driven global ESG movement. And it's not going away, despite what some of the business press tries to drum up in terms of drama and opposition forces. Certainly, there are challenges in the capital markets regarding fund management, return on investment, and so forth for investors in that area. But when it comes to operations liabilities, ESG is providing a new level of a checkpoint. Would you not all agree? And are there tensions with the ESG movement and how that practice area is flowing through organizations as it matures, with the same kinds of escalating concerns and maturity demands regarding cybersecurity practices? Are there jurisdictional and political fiefdom wars going on? I mean, what's happening with because it seems logical that the ESG component, the reporting, the accountability aspects, the transparency requirements of ESG is one of the new best friends to a more mature approach to cybersecurity issues.
Well, Art, I think it's a reputational risk, right? That's really what we're talking about here, reputational risk. I don't want to wake up one day and find out that my my product or my service has a devastating effect or contributes to a devastating effect at an environmental or social level. Right? And I agree with you, Art. I think there's a lot of hoo-ha around how we're politicizing this and trying to, to get into the upside down world when this is, to me, can be rationally discussed. I'm involved with a nonprofit. I actually chair the Northwest Maritime Center. It's a nonprofit here at the Pacific Northwest. We have a maritime high school, and we work with a lot of maritime partners, and we're trying to bring students from a high school who are not traditionally in the maritime industry to diversify the industry, because again, there's another place where there's a huge workforce gap that's happening because the baby boomers are retiring. There's a graying out. But we're having to educate our partners on appropriate behaviors around working with young people. So there's the age issue. Then there's also racial issues. And just workplace norms that today are not acceptable anymore. And we're in the unenviable situation of having to have some of these difficult conversations. They're not easy, Art, but they're reflective, I think.
Yeah, as a country, we are getting bogged down into things that basically reduce our ability to compete globally, right? When you start talking about what's important, right, and these diverse viewpoints from a cybersecurity perspective, and understanding that you need different people thinking in different ways that are solving these individual problems, because you have such a homogenized currently state of the cybersecurity profession, we just keep getting more and more breaches, right? And so we have to do something different. We have to get somebody in there thinking different, because it is only getting worse. And then even from a global perspective on the, national security wise, if you just think about and you look at the things that are going on out there, I made the comment at a speech that I gave. I said, the hackers have hacker R&D departments, right, that are figuring out how to break into control systems and run unmanned boats, barges into bridges and interrupting the entire, that just happened. So looking at how in the world, ask yourself the question, how in the world did an unmanned barge actually go off course? That's an easy little, they didn't say it, they didn't call it a hack, but that's just changing. We've seen it before, just changing a little bit of a piece of code here and a piece of code there to just veer it off an inch or two. And then you have a catastrophe. So again, we need diverse viewpoints in this space, and we are getting bogged down into things that, like I said, reduce our ability to compete on a global scale, because it doesn't mean anything to attack more diverse viewpoints in an organization.
I'll just add, as I think about, even my team and teams I've worked on, not only do I need to manage, but I also need to stay abreast of the latest vulnerabilities or PCI compliance changes, or, even team dynamics. And so as we think about folks who have an interest in joining the cybersecurity workspace, it is important to give them the opportunity to do it, even for their ability to understand some of the common threats or even new vulnerabilities that are popping up. I think as an organization, a lot of responsibility is placed on individual associates. But as an associate, our first priority, of course, is always to your family, and then you have your work. As the demands of life become larger, right, it is a very interesting balance to make sure that you are staying abreast of the latest and greatest, and also taking care of your first priority. Another reason why, giving an individual who is hungry to, join our workspace the opportunities, because they're doing the research, right? They're ingrained and they know the latest and greatest attacks and the new vectors that are popping up. They're avid AI users, right? They understand, what it looks like. They understand new SaaS solutions coming and how AI can help improve coding standards. They understand that. And it is in our best interest as business leaders to give them the opportunity to join our team to help us become better and to keep our competitive advantage strong.
As I used to say, just bury them, because they have the capacity to absorb so much stuff. And if I give you the job to go do this, then I don't have to do it. And that's the thought process when they're ingrained in it. So yeah.
Well, and that's a thing, Tamika, I wish every manager had the ability to look holistically, because that's what you're doing. You're thinking holistically about talent and about being a leader. And we need everybody to do that, because now we're getting out of this, homogenous environment where I'll only pick people that look like me. And I think about potential. And I think also that's a strength of women. Tamika, you're a great example, right? You're looking way into the future, but you're also situationally aware of what's happening around you now, and you're tapping into it.
Absolutely. That's
Well,
right.
I know when we were talking earlier that you had called out a number of concerns, issues, talents that are needed in a future professional as the industry evolves, as well as what the industry itself needs right now. And you talked about vulnerability management skills, being a good investigator, that there's a need for better process and protocols and standards, and also brushing up on how organizations approach their response to various kinds of incidents. And also I know that one of you mentioned early on in this conversation, the need for folks to have knowledge about business context, not just their own company, but their industry and the competitive market dynamics that their organization is operating in, and the factors beyond the immediate control of that organization that they may be required to respond to. What am I missing there? What else are some of these characteristics that the profession needs more of?
So I'm going to address soft skills, because I think we're seeing, especially as you move people from an individual contributor to a manager, they need to have skills like the ability to empower a team, the ability to inspire, to have empathy for their employees, to be able to have a vision and take people along with you, not by just saying you work for me and you must do it, but in empowering them to see the vision that you have. So working on those soft skills, and it's oftentimes a shift for individual contributors who are really good at cybersecurity and understand controls or access, whatever, to then shift to be a good manager.
And a shameless plug is that's what one of our leadership programs is about. The Mike Lead Communicators course is to take individual contributors and turn them into people leaders, because that is something that's the problem. You have a lot of technologists that are in leadership roles that really don't know how to lead people. And as Kathy pointed out, that those she says soft skills, I call them corporate survival skills. Those corporate survival skills that individuals need to be able to maneuver their career once they make that transition is important. And there's a lack of that, because cybersecurity is a child of IT. So you have a lot of technologists that are in leadership roles that really don't have any interest in being a good leader. And that's what we're missing.
I don't know whether it was Mary or Tamika when we were talking earlier that mentioned this notion of risk management as a life path. Does anybody want to speak to that, since we're talking about the ideal persona for a professional to be successful in this industry?
I think that was Tamika.
That's Tamika. You're on.
Sounds like something I would say.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about, Tamika, why don't you expand a little bit on your thought behind that, and then we'd love to hear what everybody else on the panel has to say about this notion. Basically, you're talking about a type that would be
Mhm.
ideal for this kind of work, right? So
Absolutely.
what have we not mentioned up to this
Mhm.
point that we should include here?
Well, it's interesting. So my perspective is this. I've spent, maybe the first 10 years, 12 years thinking about, well, what do I want to do? Am I aligned to my right role? Is this what I'm here to do? Am I serving the community that I need to serve? And that's because, I think that life is not just what we do, but it's always nice to know that what we do has a higher value. And for me, I've spent some time in different coaching programs right before COVID. Of course, I had this question where I'm like, okay, is this where I need to be? Do I need to make any changes? I'm always thinking about my professional development, my personal development. I'm probably one on the far end of the spectrum where I have a life of just development. That's just what I enjoy. And for me, what I realized is that I am here to create systems and processes, and I enjoy technology. And it is my life path. My life path, meaning that over COVID, I decided to invest in my own education and learn more about insurance. Insurance is another form of risk management. I enjoy risk management. I'm constantly managing risk inside the workplace and outside the workplace, and I love it. So I know that I am aligned with where I need to be, and it makes each and every day that I log on more fulfilling because I know that there is a higher reason for me to be in this career. So my message there is, it is beautiful on the other side when you feel really good about what you do. And I know in cybersecurity, oftentimes, sometimes you have some bad days, but even on the worst day, it's still a good day. And I think over COVID, I found that a lot of some of my cybersecurity peers struggled with that. I don't know if it's soft skills, maybe it's the corporate survival skills, but just understanding the rhyme and reason as to what they do and why they do it, because they didn't have that personal outlet that they formerly had to let the worries and the threats and the vulnerabilities kind of die down until they log back on at night or perhaps the next day. So I think it's important to, as a professional, to ensure that you're focusing on your strengths. And whatever your strength is, I believe that there is a place that strength can be leveraged within the cybersecurity world so that you're focused on your quote unquote life path.
That's great. No, I think,
That's amazing.
yeah, that is. And, that purpose-driven thought process is important. But and I teach from a very beginning to professionals trying to enter into this space. You're a risk management professional. And in order to talk to the board understands risk, right? And so the problem with a lot of cybersecurity C-level executives, if they still want to talk technology when they should be talking risk, because there's no such thing, and there's never been a such thing as 100% secure. So you have to draw this into a risk management strategy and get people to understand that you're hedging your bets, right? You're ultimately, there's only a finite amount of dollars. What is the highest risk? What are you going to focus your attention on? What do you want your team to be focused on? And what is it that it's out there, but you're like, I can't focus on that right now. And that's one thing that we don't historically in this profession do well, to explaining to the board what that risk looks like. And that is where the profession is. So a person that is striving to be in this profession needs to understand that despite the fact that all of these things and that you're hungry and you're coming in the door and you want to tell everybody how much you know, the business can always say, I don't care. And you have to be okay with that. Right. And hedge your bet on something else that they actually do care about to get the attention and secure and the controls and all of those things.
So I want to compliment Mary, because what she's done with her nonprofit in the leadership skills area is really, again, and I like it, your survival skills in corporations or soft skills or whatever, but communication skills, because part of the reasons the budgets don't go to the cyber entity is they haven't communicated to the board in the right way. And, board members, your eyes glaze over if they start talking about details and technology. So you have to put it in a framework of risk and business strategy. And I try to encourage CISOs to think about their next career step should be the chief risk officer, because they've had a piece of this risk and a way to analyze it. And again, because all the risks are cascading and interrelated, I think a cyber person has a really good background to move into that more general risk area. And more corporations, financial services by nature has chief risk officers, and they were mandated by Dodd-Frank to have risk committees, but more and more companies are adding risk committees, and a chief risk officer, and cyber is coming under that.
I think something to pick up on what Tamika said, and to also, it really resonates with, I think, what both Mary and Kathy's been talking about. In a sense, our profession needs the entire person, not just part of you. And I think, Tamika, that's something I really resonate with you. And I think, Kathy and Mary, your years of work in this industry also point to that. There's something about authentically having an interest and a desire. But I also love the fact that we have to invest in ourselves. We're in a discipline where you cannot, in cybersecurity, you must keep up. It is not for the faint of heart. And so having a thirst for knowledge, and frankly, embracing change, and not being afraid of being in an industry where you have to learn new things almost all the time, that has to be part of your DNA. And it has to be part of something that you genuinely like and want to do. Plus, I think all of us, in one way or another, have made multiple times in our lives, we've made investments in ourselves, meaning that the company didn't pay for it. Nobody made me do it. I looked around and I thought, I need to invest in myself right now.
That to me is the intellectual challenge. That's why I love this field and I love risk, because you cannot be complacent. In fact, I've had board members say, well, there's so much work and I've got to read more. And I said, then you shouldn't be on a board, because you have to do that. You've got to stay current with all the different risk areas, but especially cybersecurity. And I do find it helped boards relate to the latest breach, like the or AT&T, bringing that back into the boardroom and explaining what happened there, because they do relate to the headlines that are in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. And if you could wrap that around, but here's what we're doing different, or we didn't shut off Citrix, or whatever it might be, that helps the board relate to the good practices that you have. But that communications from the CISO is critically important.
Well, there's a lot of issues that we have begun to sort of peel the onion on, and we are going to record a part 2, a second episode, to continue to look at a number of trends and developments and challenges and opportunities around risk management, cybersecurity, and compliance. I'd like to thank our distinguished panel, Lynn Terwoerds, Catherine Allen, Mary Cheney, and Tamika Foster. Until next time, for part 2 on this discussion, Art Stewart, this is What Matters Most on LinkedIn and YouTube.